On April 21, 2026, something historic and deeply controversial happened inside one of the most feared prisons on Earth. 486 alleged leaders, founders, and high-ranking commanders of MS-13 were placed on trial together. Not in a normal courtroom. Not with individual lawyers for each defendant. But inside the walls of CECOT, El Salvador's massive terrorism confinement center. They stood accused of 47,000 crimes committed between 2012 and 2022. Among those charges, 29,000 homicides. This was not just a trial. It was an attempt to put an entire criminal empire on the stand at once. This is the story of how El Salvador went from the murder capital of the world to holding the largest mass trial of gang leaders in modern history, and why the world is still divided on whether this is justice or something far more dangerous. To understand what happened on that April day, we have to go back to the beginning. In the 1980s, a brutal civil war tore El Salvador apart. Hundreds of thousands of Salvadorans fled to the United States. Many ended up in the violent neighborhoods of Los Angeles. There, young Salvadoran immigrants, facing racism and attacks from existing Mexican gangs, formed their own group for protection, Mara Salvatrucha MS-13. What started as a neighborhood crew quickly evolved into something far more organized and savage. In California prisons, they allied with the Mexican mafia and adopted the number 13, the 13th letter of the alphabet, M for Mara. Their motto became simple and terrifying: kill, rape, control. By the 1990s, MS-13 had become one of the most feared gangs in America. Then the United States changed its deportation policies. Foreign-born criminals, no matter how long they had lived in America, could now be sent back to their countries of origin. Between 2000 and 2004 alone, roughly 20,000 criminals were deported to Central America, thousands of them hardened MS-13 members who had never really lived as adults in El Salvador. They arrived in a country still scarred by civil war, with weak institutions, corrupt police, and generations of desperate, angry young men. MS-13 didn't just survive there, they thrived. They built a parallel state. They controlled neighborhoods, bus routes, markets, and even prisons. They extorted businesses for hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Refused to pay, and the consequences were swift and brutal. Your shop was burned, your daughter taken, or your body left dismembered in the street. By 2015, El Salvador had the highest homicide rate in the world outside of active war zones: 106 murders per 100,000 people. Over 6,600 people were killed in a single year. The gangs had effectively taken over the country. For years, previous governments tried truces and negotiations. They all failed. Then in 2019, Nayib Bukele became president. He promised a new approach: no more deals with the gangs. The breaking point came in March 2022. In one single weekend, MS-13 carried out a coordinated wave of violence that left 87 people dead, the bloodiest weekend since the Civil War. Bukele called it the final proof that the gangs had broken any informal truce. On March 27, 2022, he declared a nationwide state of exception. Constitutional rights were suspended. No arrest warrants needed, no immediate access to lawyers, mass arrests and mass trials allowed. In the following years, over 91,000 people were arrested, roughly 2% of the entire adult population of El Salvador. But Bukele didn't stop at arrests. He built CECOT, the Terrorism Confinement Center, a purpose-built megaprison designed to hold 40,000 of the most dangerous gang members. No windows, no family visits, no outdoor time. 30 minutes of exercise a day in windowless corridors. 24-hour surveillance. The message was clear. The gangs would never run the country from inside prison again. And then came the trial that shocked the world. On April 21, 2026, 486 alleged MS-13 leaders, including founders, top commanders, and key lieutenants, were put on trial together inside CECOT itself. They faced charges for 47,000 crimes, including 29,000 homicides, femicides, forced disappearances, extortion, arms trafficking, and rebellion for trying to create a parallel
Communications
state.
confirmed the kill order for the
evidence
drive-by.
included years of
This ties the
intercepted
syndicate directly to
communications,
the murder.
testimony from former members, and records of prison-ordered killings carried out through coded messages even after the mass arrests. For the first time in history, an entire gang hierarchy was being tried as a single criminal enterprise. The world watched in disbelief. Supporters called it justice on a scale never seen before, a reckoning for decades of terror. Critics called it a dangerous precedent. Mass trials with limited due process, held inside a prison built under emergency powers that suspended constitutional rights. Human rights groups raised serious concerns about arbitrary arrests, deaths in custody, and the conditions inside CECOT. Yet the results on the streets were undeniable. Homicides in El Salvador plummeted from over 6,600 in 2015 to just 82 in 2025. Extortion rackets that once strangled the economy almost disappeared. Neighborhoods once ruled by fear became safe again. Bukele's approval rating remained above 90%. For millions of ordinary Salvadorans, the trade-off was worth it. But the trial of the 486 is more than just numbers. It is the final chapter in a decades-long war between the state and the gangs. It is the moment when the men who once believed they were untouchable were forced to sit together in a courtroom inside the very prison built to contain them. Their tattoos, once symbols of power and fear, now serve as living evidence against them. The secret language that helped them rule a nation for 30 years has finally been turned against them. As the trial continues and verdicts are handed down, El Salvador stands at a crossroads. Has the country finally broken the grip of the gangs? Or has it replaced one form of unchecked power with another? The ink on the prisoner's skin still tells the old stories. But the power those stories once carried may be gone forever. This is the story of the 486. This is the story of how El Salvador put an entire gang on trial. And this is the story of one of the most dramatic reckonings in modern criminal justice history.